Hey there everyone, this is Samuel Johnson and welcome back to the MTV SpiderMan Retrospectives. And today we're going to be discussing episode 4 of SpiderMan, the new animated series, Sword of Shikata. And as the title of the episode implies, we're introduced to a new villain, a woman named Shikata. She is a very skilled swordswoman who also is endowed with magic powers, who has been hired to hunt Spider-Man, specifically by this rich guy by the name of Richard Damian. Yes, Richard Damian. He's essentially Richard. I don't know how Richard gets his money, but essentially he's just kind of got. But essentially, if what he says in the episode is anything to go by, he has various wells of which he gets money, including financing movies. And one of his hobbies is collecting rare and endangered animals. He has like secret compartments around his business office where a bunch of rare animals are in cages, and he's hiring Shikata because he wants her to go after Spider-Man, who, while his name is Spider-Man, because of his powers and the spider in his name, he thinks that he's more animal than man and deserves to be locked in a cage. So, yeah, he wants him captured and locked up for his own personal collection. And as such, Shikata does ultimately take the deal and agrees to hunt him, but after she ends up fighting with Spider-Man, her tune changes. Essentially, while she finds herself impressed with his abilities. Like, he's able to keep up with her, they're able to match wits, and she even finds his whole jokey tone kind of somewhat amusing, especially when compared to his skill level. So, which I do kind of like, as she recognizes that probably that attitude is best to just is used to kind of hide the more the stronger aspects of his personality. So I do kind of like that. But put simply, she sees that Spider-Man is more than just a random guy in footy pajamas. She actually thinks that he's a worthy adversary, and as such, while their first initial fight is interrupted by the police showing up, she does promise the webhead that she'll fight him again. However, with the next time they fight, it won't be because some rich guy is keeping her on a leash. She wants to fight him honorably in a one-to-one battle where they both will give it their all, and by the end, well, to put it in cage match terms, two men enter, one man leaves. She wants to fight him to the death, and she's not taking no for an answer. As such, she actually goes to Richard, and she actually gives him back his down payment, telling him the deal's off. I'll fight him, but I can't promise I'll bring him back in alive. And unfortunately, the good Mr. Damien isn't exactly happy with this. And when she walks out, his bodyguard, who did not like Shikata in the beginning, tells Richard that she's a liability now because she knows what he wanted to do with Spider-Man, and while he may see Spider-Man as just an animal, he's still a human being, and he wanted to capture him. That's kidnapping, right? As such, Richard does order his bodyguard to kill her, and he does it in the most unsubtle way because how he does it is that she's just walking down the street and he charges at her in a black van and then causing her to jump into an alley, and he blocks her in. There's nothing subtle about it. The end result is that she's able to kill one of his men, and while he did bring some backup that almost outmatches her, Spider-Man is able to come in and manages to fend him off and save her life, which only strengthens Shikata's determination to fight Spidey eventually. However, she does see this as eye for an eye, so to speak. So she leaves and goes to Richard's mansion, and well, she slaughters him. Not even kidding. She takes out his guards, meets him in his office, and then just cuts his head straight off. As such, Richard's out for the count, and as such, it's just Spider-Man versus Shikata. But that's where an unknown element comes in. You see, I mentioned earlier how one of Richard's financial endeavors was film production. Well, he was actually financing a film that MJ had auditioned for and got the part for. Unfortunately, the film kind of sucked. Yeah, according to MJ herself, the script was just terrible. She described it as a U movie, U for ugh. And Harry, because he's the owner of a multi-billion-dollar corporation, is able to use her connections to get to land MJ a meeting with the good Mr. Richard. Because well, maybe they can talk about ironing out the script so that she can get her career off the ground. Unfortunately, the night that MJ was supposed to meet with this guy was the night that he got his head chopped off. And so when she goes to his mansion and finds him beheaded behind his desk, she naturally freaks the hell out and runs away. However, as she does run away, she sees Shikata out in the courtyard. Only Shikata's looking a little older. And as she's sitting there, she seems to be chanting something while holding her sword up. She holds into the air as the moon shines down on it, and as she lowers it down over her face, suddenly she turns young again. And the instant MJ, sorry, I'm just, excuse me a second. Sorry about that. I thought something was about to fall off over there. Anyway, like I was saying, she makes a run for it, and while Shikata sees her, she doesn't really do anything to pursue. As such, Shikata just kind of goes out into New York with one of her men, and essentially just causes enough mayhem to get Spider-Man's attention. And while Spider-Man does end up fighting her, he still refuses to fight on her terms. He doesn't want to fight her to the death, and unfortunately, she's not, like I said, she ain't taking no for an answer. As such, once MJ actually sees the fight on the street, she tries calling out to Spider-Man, but one of her men grabs her and holds her at gunpoint, with Shikata telling Spidey, either we fight to the death, or she dies. And so at that point, Spider-Man realizes he has no choice, and the fighting gets more serious. However, MJ does manage to knock the Shikata's guy aside by essentially macing him, and she tells Spider-Man that that somehow the sword is where she gets her power, and as such, during the fight, Shikata got the sword knocked out of her hands before she can summon it back to her. Spider-Man manages to grab it, and well, using his powers, he slams it into the ground and breaks it in two. And just as MJ said, doing that does end up killing Shikata. When it breaks, a green mist rises from it. Shikata actually looks mortified, but she bows respectfully, and just in a second, her youth just fades away. She's back to being an old woman, and then she just explodes in green light, leaving nothing behind but dust. As a result, because of all the commotion they caused right there in the middle of the street, the police are called, her henchman is arrested, and Spidey ends up thanking MJ for the intel. They have a little romantic moment. They kiss, which is cute until you remember that MJ doesn't know that Spider-Man is Peter Parker, so essentially this could be like her cheating on her boyfriend, but whatever. But at the end of the day, Spider-Man's just still putting on the moves, and MJ just kind of realizes that with her financier dead, she needs a new job. I know. I mean, the guy's dead, but whatever. The bad guy was beaten anyway, so all's well that ends well. Okay, in all seriousness, the episode, in my opinion, was just alright. It wasn't anything great, but it was interesting. I think one of its main problems is Shikata. She is, and no pun intended here, kind of a double-edged sword when it comes to villains. On the one hand, there are aspects about her that I do find interesting and are very much worth looking into. For starters, I do kind of like why she wants to fight Spider-Man. It's essentially not because she gets anything personal from it. It's just that she sees Spider-Man as a noble warrior. And I do like seeing how she comes to that conclusion. Initially, she fought Spider-Man because she was just paid to. And earlier in the episode, you saw her and her men scoping Spider-Man out while he was going around doing his whole hero thing, gauging his abilities, seeing what he could do. And she thought, this guy's impressive, might be worth going after. But then when she actually fights him and interacts with him, actually talks with him, she realizes that he's more than just a guy with fancy schmancy powers. He is a skilled warrior. She sees his attitude when it comes to this, and that despite how he puts on this clownish demeanor, he does take the fight seriously. She sees it in his movement. She sees it in his behavior. And again, it's even further cemented later in the episode when he goes to fight her, even though earlier she told Spider-Man, I'm coming to hunt you, and I'm not gonna stop till one of us is dead. She actually thinks he's an honorable warrior, and thus the reason she wants to fight him is because she thinks he deserves a proper fight. He doesn't deserve to be hunted like a dog. He's a strong man, a strong person, a good character, has great strength of character, and deserves to be treated like an honorable warrior. The only problem is that that her mindset of what is considered honorable doesn't really match up with Spider-Man's, as Spidey is the kind of guy who will help anybody because he's just that kind of a person. And while there are villains of his that have gotten killed, Spider-Man is not a killer. He doesn't go for the grim vigilante justice. He's a guy that's just trying to do the right thing because of, great power, great responsibility. So while he does end up fighting her to ensure that people don't get hurt, especially those closest to him, unfortunately, he doesn't want to kill her, and the only reason he ultimately does is because she gives him no choice in the matter. And I do kind of like that angle for a villain. She's not doing this to try and hurt Spider-Man. She just wants a good fight, and she believes that Spider-Man is just a worthy enough adversary for her to give it her all. And likewise, she wants the exact same thing from him. She's ready to kill him, so he should be ready to kill her. Which, I'm not for superheroes that kill. I understand, but at the same time, I understand that there are times when there's no other option. Here's how I feel when it comes to essentially fighting or superheroics. If you can avoid killing your opponent, you probably you should. However, if they're literally giving you no other option, if it's you or them, then you kind of have no other choice. Again, this is only if there's no other choice. If all other options have been expended, then you might have to consider it. And again, that's still a maybe. I don't advocate for killing people for justice. There's a time and a place, but that time and place has to be like the absolute, no holds barred, every other option's tried, final option. It's not something you can just do. I'm not one for... So, it has to be something that you really have to consider. And if your opponent is literally holding like a gun to your head and saying, I am going to kill you, and the only option out is to possibly end their life, you might have to just do that. Again, it's not something that you should take lightly. It's not something that you really should weigh out. It's not something it's not an easy decision to come to, but in times there are times and places when you do need to consider it. And when it comes to Shikata, she does pretty much do that. She holds a metaphorical gun to Spidey's head through MJ, and as a result, Spidey does have to play by her rules, and those rules are not kind. But that being said, I do like that MJ is the one that does help Spider-Man find her weakness, which I think is also another cool thing. I do like seeing how the mystical connection with the sword. It does raise a bit of questions there. And as a fighter, she's very interesting, and she's very interesting in her motivations for being a fighter, just wanting an honorable opponent. I like that. But I did mention that she was kind of a double-edged sword, so to speak, and the negative aspect of her character is, unfortunately, we don't know that much about her. We know that she's a fighter who wants a good, strong, honorable fight, and she respects Spider-Man enough to fight him to the death, but we don't really know what drives that. We know what her motive for fighting Spider-Man is, but what motivates her to be like this? Why does she do this? Where did she get the sword? Why does she have the sword? How is it magical? Why is it tied to her? Why is using it giving her all these magic powers? We don't really know that. We're never actually told what drives Shikata forward beyond her wanting to fight Spider-Man. And as a result, we are left with some questions about her character and backstory. Like, why does she have the sword? Why does she hire herself out like this? Why does she do literally any of this? We are never told why, and as a result, it does kind of leave you wanting. Now, what we do get from her is enough so that you're still interested in her, because she's obviously a very skilled fighter, and she can match Spider-Man perfectly in battle. But at this end, of course, and they even showcase how badass she is, as earlier on when she's hired by Richard to hunt Spidey. The bodyguard that didn't like her in the beginning wants to test her abilities, and she just deflects two of his bullets without even trying, and then blasts his gun away with her magic hands, I suppose. So they do showcase that she is a badass. It's just at the same time you're kind of left wondering more about her. There is enough there that you're interested, but we don't get to see any more of that, especially since at the end of the episode she is killed off as per the duel to the death thing. So again, double-edged sword. Interesting character. Wish we knew more about her. Well, unfortunately though, that's another weakness of the episode. Richard Damian, the dude's just a dumbass. I mean it. Like, him and his whole cadre of creeps, they're all morons. Like, again, his motivation for wanting to hunt Spider-Man is because, he's a man. He's actually more animal than human, and there's nothing really interesting about him. He just wants to hunt Spider-Man because he thinks he'd be a great addition to his collection, and as a result, the dude sort of just doesn't carry as much weight. He's just a dumbass rich kid who wants to hunt Spider-Man because collection. There's no real big reason. There's nothing really fanciful about it. It's kind of like, I guess I can say this, Diet Kraven the Hunter. Like, okay, I'll talk about Kraven the Hunter in a later episode, but if you don't know who he is, short version, Game Hunter, hunts Spider-Man for thrill. Essentially, like, when you have a character like that, you do kind of get a sense of weight to it, and it's kind of similar to Shikata in that he wants to hunt Spider-Man for the sake of the thrill of the hunt, that he believes that Spider-Man's a worthy adversary. This guy, though, is just a moron, and a lot of his methods really don't reflect an interesting villain. He's just a guy who sits back and lets other people do his job. Even he admits that while he has this collection, he probably didn't capture any of these animals himself. He just let other people do it for him. All he does is just look at them. As a result, he doesn't really have much in the way of compelling villainy, especially since his day job is literally just regular rich guy stuff. And even when Shikata turns on him and says, "I'm not hunting Spider-Man for you anymore, I'm hunting him for myself," he just kind of freaks out and does a stupid thing. Like, she showed that she was a very skilled fighter and that she has magic powers and can deflect bullets with her sword. And you think it's a good idea to hunt her because of what she wants to do? She openly admits that she wants to fight Spider-Man to the death. Do you think that she would tell anyone about your wanting to capture him? If anything, that would probably hinder her journey or plan to try and fight him, because she can't fight him when he's locked up in a cage. And if you did catch him in a cage, that would make you a target for her. But I guess he just decided to skip a step there because he decides to send his dumbass bodyguards to go after her, and they do it in the most unsubtle way. Like, if I saw, like, a van charging down the street, it would draw my attention, and while I know people can be kind of dumb, I think at least someone would look at the black van that was chasing after the woman in the green jumpsuit, because, yeah, she wore a green jumpsuit, and think to myself, something weird is going on. Maybe I should call the police. I would think that. And guess what? It does come back to bite him in the ass, because she hunts him down and kills him. So really, the guy's he's a moron. He's just an absolute moron. And by the end of the episode, he's really just a minor inconvenience. He's the guy that gets the ball rolling for Shikata to hunt Spider-Man. But unfortunately, there's nothing really much. But as a result, ultimately, he's just a stepping stone, knocked aside when he becomes too much of a hindrance. And ultimately, it's just Spider-Man versus Shikata. I think admittedly, the fight scenes are still really cool between Spider-Man and Shikata. They're clearly of even skill and ability. Her powers may not be the same as his, but she can keep up with him in a lot of ways. She can keep up with his enhanced speed and strength. She can counter him. Her powers do make him an equal match for him, especially because she can heal herself. She can make things levitate. She's definitely a very nuanced and they do clearly showcase that she's a very skilled fighter. But, so that's all still really cool, because that's actually nothing I love about the show. The fight scenes are still really awesome. I think I might have talked about that already, but they really are. Very fast paced, very fun to watch. And I guess maybe the stuff with MJ was helpful too, because she is the one that ultimately provides Spider-Man with the info that the sword is to her power. But at the end of the day, the episode's still just alright. I do like Shikata, for what we do get of her, is interesting enough so that I like watching her. She has her motives are very nice and very are different enough so that you think she's interesting. I do like seeing the way she sidesteps Spider-Man and comes to the conclusion that she does. I do like the fight scenes, and I do kind of like seeing how I do like seeing her go on. I like seeing how the plot develops, especially as she and Spider-Man continue interacting, and the ultimate fight draws near. I like how Spider-Man does try. I love how Spider-Man does manage to beat her. I do wish we had learned more about her, so that's so that's kind of a problem. And again, Richard Damian is a moron, and I didn't care for him. But overall, I think the episode's all right. Shikata's a decent villain. Wish we knew more about her. I liked seeing the development I loved seeing her development as she interacted with Spider-Man. I love the battles here. I liked how the final battle ended. Again, wish we knew more about Shikata before we got. Still pretty good. So, yeah, that's about it then. Thank you for watching. I'm Samuel Johnson, and I'll see you next week. Take care.